Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is literally world-changing. We're looking at an epic historical collision. What actually happens when the massive civilizational paradigms of the East and the West finally meet? We're going to explore how their totally opposite views of heaven, nature, and reality itself crashed into each other and ultimately formed something entirely new. So, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The ultimate philosophical clash. 2. The East's interconnected universe. 3. The West's entity-centered universe. 4. When worlds finally collided. 5. The search for autogenous modernity. And 6. The Cixinju harmonious middle ground. Part 1. The ultimate philosophical clash. Civilizational paradigms. Now you might be wondering what actually happens when two completely different ways of seeing reality crash into each other for the first time. We aren't just talking about a simple cultural exchange here, we are talking about a fundamental collision of how humanity understands existence itself. On one side, we've got the Eastern correlational view, represented by the yin-yang, and on the other side, the Western entity-focused view. These represent centuries of totally isolated thought finally going head-to-head. It is basically the ultimate philosophical showdown. Part 2. East, the interconnected universe, focusing on yin-yang and the 5 phases. All right, to really grasp this clash, we need to look at our thesis first. The traditional East relied on the yin-yang and the 5 phases, that's metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, to describe what is essentially a correlational universe. The big takeaway here? Literally, nothing exists in isolation. Everything is part of this massive, cyclical, interconnected web. And in this view, heaven isn't a person or a being. It's an inherent natural law. So a really crucial point here, especially when we look at Neo-Confucianism, is this specific idea of natural law. In this paradigm, heaven is an impersonal principle. The inherent law or sort of blueprint of all things, which is called Li, is completely inseparable from the physical energy or matter that makes up the world, known as Qi. It's a package deal. Principle and energy are locked together in just perfect harmony. Part 3. West, the entity-centered universe. Specifically looking at the Jisoo painting style. Okay, let's jump across the globe to our antithesis. The West utilized what's referred to as the Jisoo tradition. This was an artistic and philosophical framework that heavily leaned on Aristotle's 4 basic elements of earth, water, fire, and wind. Notice the huge shift in focus here. Instead of a seamless web of inseparable relationships, the Western universe was seen as being built out of distinct, independent substances or entities, kind of like independent building blocks. And unlike that impersonal natural law of the East we were just talking about, the West believed in a personal godhead. They envisioned an independent, totally external creator. And because this creator exists completely outside of nature, it resulted in a strict, fundamental separation between humans, the divine, and nature itself. This stark juxtaposition right here is the absolute crux of the matter. We have an entity-centered universe in the West versus a relationship-centered universe in the East. I mean, just imagine for a second how differently you would interact with the world around you depending on which of these 2 lenses you were looking through. When we put them side by side like this, we see 2 massive paradigms bravely attempting to explain nature, but with fundamentally opposite executions. The West leans entirely on independent existence, while the East focuses heavily on inseparable dependence. They are, for all intents and purposes, virtual mirror opposites of one another. Part 4. When worlds finally collided. The ontological shock. So what actually happens when this thesis and antithesis finally meet face-to-face? Well, for centuries, these views formed completely in isolation. But then, in the modern era, Jesuit missionary Matteo Ricci introduced the concept of a Western personal god to East Asia through his work, the Chenju Silui. And wow, this delivered a fresh, monumental shock to the East Asian intellectual class. Out of nowhere, a universe built entirely on impersonal natural law was directly challenged by the concept of an external creator. This collision sparked a total clash of civilizational paradigms. First, you had a conflict of reality itself. If the universe is made of separate entities, does that make the Eastern natural law an entity too? Second, a huge conflict regarding the divine, a personal creator versus an impersonal law. And third, just utter confusion regarding humanity's actual place in the mystery of the cosmos. Everything they thought they knew was suddenly up for debate. Part 5.
Search for autogenous modernity, a harmonious response.
As you can imagine, this extreme confrontation drove intellectuals of the time to desperately search for a way out of the ideological chaos. They couldn't just ignore the West, right? But they also couldn't abandon their own deep-rooted philosophies. So they searched for what we call autogenous modernity. It's a pretty brilliant concept. It means an indigenous, homegrown modernization that didn't passively surrender to westernization, but also didn't stubbornly cling to old traditions. It was all about forging a completely new path forward. Part 6. Si Qianzhou, Harmonious Middle Ground Through Donghak Thought. This intense search actually led to a grand synthesis, Donghak Thought. This was a uniquely Korean philosophical movement that emerged right during this chaotic period. Specifically, it brought us the concept of Shishin-chun, which translates to serving heaven. And this wasn't just some half-baked compromise. It was a profound philosophical leap. It beautifully acknowledged the divine, personal nature of heaven from the West, while completely maintaining that intimate, interconnected relationship from the East. Through the ideological value of liminality, which basically just means existing in a transitional or middle state, Donghak thought revitalized both of these views. It pioneered a space where the Eastern unity of heaven and the Western concept of the divine could coexist seamlessly without destroying each other. It is truly a masterclass in philosophical problem solving. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a powerful question to think about. We look around today and we see a world that is so deeply divided by polarizing ideologies. So, can this autogenous synthesis of East and West, this idea of finding a true harmonious middle ground, like Xiqianzhu, provide the blueprint we need to solve the ideological polarizations of our modern world? Think about that for a second. The answers of the past might just be the absolute key to our future. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.